Hey everyone, and welcome back to the episode of the Movie Mates podcast. I am Matthew, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Callum.
Hey dude. This is episode 28, I believe, and as you
I
can
think
see
I
by
think
the
it's 27, isn't it?
27. And yeah, where as you've seen by the title, it is Obsessions. So I'm just going to pass over my good pal, and he's going to explain what films we're going to be talking about today. I'm really excited for this one.
So today's theme is one that we've been really excited about for the last few days.
Absolutely.
We're talking obsession in films. So today we're going to be talking to you about the King of Comedy, 1982 Robert De Niro film, American Beauty starring Kevin Spacey, and Misery starring James Caan and Kathy Bates. And
Awesome.
this was honestly a fantastic set of films to watch. Honestly,
It was
I, I
honestly
don't
so
think
good.
I don't think we've ever had an episode where I liked every film that we watched. I feel like there's usually two brilliant ones and one absolute stinker. And
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed myself this morning whenever I was sort of shotgunning all of these before we recorded.
Me too, Pat. I honestly wish I could change my movies that shaped Matthew, because there was a film in here that easily gets into that list. It's that good. I'm so excited for this. But
So
yeah,
you're saying that you're an obsessive weirdo?
absolutely. But no, thank you for everyone who has liked, subscribed, comment, shared. We really do appreciate it. Be sure to comment your thoughts on the films down below, or email us at moviematespodcast@gmail.com for any film suggestions or questions. And yeah, spoilers for all these films. So, Callum, what's the first film we're going to be talking about, mate?
The first film that we're going to be talking about today is The King of Comedy, uh, an incredible film,
So good.
which we,
So
we
good.
both recently watched. So do you want to just get into it?
Let's do it, mate. Let's do it. So, have you got any opening remarks for the film?
I haven't got any contextual points, just sort of sequential for the film itself.
Sure, sure. Well, I guess, you know, I don't know if you've seen many Martin Scorsese films, but this is the first one I've actually ever seen, I think. So it was my first introduction to his filmography, and honestly, like, I think this is a pretty good one to start off with. It's so good, so good.
Yes, to my recollection, this is the first I've seen, and hopefully Taxi Driver will be a soon second. Uh,
Yeah,
Martin Scorsese is obviously one of the most famous film directors of all time. He's hugely respected in the film industry, and I was really excited to get into his filmography. And I fully agree with you that this is clearly a brilliant one to start on. Because if this,
completely.
I've only heard of this film because I was aware that it was, an inspiration used for Joker. So had Joker not come out, I don't think I would have even heard about this film. And that's sort of, that shows that it's criminally underrated.
Yeah,
This film was actually a massive flop at the box office.
really.
Yeah, if I'm remembering the numbers correctly, it had a budget of $19 million, and it grossed $2.5 million. So it was
Wow.
it was a huge financial disaster,
I
and
can't believe that.
I just don't understand it. I assume it was probably just a massive marketing fuck up, and that they
Yeah.
just didn't know its audience.
That's really shocking to me, because as you said, without Joker, I don't think I would have seen this film either. And I guess that is one of the main you know discussions, or discussion points I wanted to mention with you. And I think this Joker has so many similarities to this film.
Yeah,
I think it does border on complete ripoff. I really do.
yeah. I've written it goes far beyond an homage and builds into daylight robbery.
It it doesn't necessarily worsen my opinion on Joker. It just makes me, you know, it makes me sort of believe that Joker has no real originality. There's a lot of direct scenes and plot points that are, as you say, it is basically daylight robbery. They're just completely ripped off. And
Yeah,
we've even got actors, that
yeah.
are in both films, and in De Niro. So, it doesn't necessarily worsen the opinion on Joker, but it makes me think, this film should be held right up there with it.
Yeah. I think it was probably excusable at the point at which Martin Scorsese was a producer on Joker, but when he stepped away, they really should have removed any influence he had, because it's really interesting to see how similar they are. I'd sort of seen I'd seen like shot for shot comparisons, and I thought, oh wow, that's a great visual homage to something that's thematically similar. And then watching the film, I was like, wow,
I
this
know.
is just Joker but better made.
It really is. This film is, it's a real hidden gem, I think, not just in Martin Scorsese filmography, but just generally, and this is one of the first films I've seen like De Niro in. I think maybe Joker was the first film I seen De Niro in, which is a disgrace on my part. He's one of the most famous actors in the world. So, but
Honestly, I think it's better that you haven't seen him in anything rather than what I've seen him in, which was Dirty Grandpa and The Intern. Uh, Neither of which are bad films, but they're obviously not to the caliber of his other works.
yeah, well, it is surprising to me because when you think of De Niro performances, King of Comedy, would have I don't think it would have been up there with his other major works. Like, was he in The Godfather, if I'm correct, or
He played young. Uh, he plays young one of the Corleones. I think it's Vito Corleone. I unfortunately have not viewed the Godfather,
me
but
neither.
hopefully a soon to be episode for us.
Hopefully so, mate. Hopefully so.
But yes, he's had a huge career, and it's embarrassing on my part that I haven't viewed more of his uh, well well praised performances. And yeah, it almost upsets me that I don't hear anyone talking about this film.
It's so good. I just it's just one of those films that really makes you consider the moral implications of Rupert, because I really wanted to ask you, and I know I'm jumping a bit all over the place here, but one of the main things I want to ask you is, do you think Rupert Pupkin is a bad guy?
Yeah, definitely. Like
Really?
yeah, I
Okay.
think that sort of by having, I have to critique the film in one manner, in
Go
that
for it.
throughout the film we see like Jerry and his team's reaction to Rupert's work, and their staunch rejection of him being on the show, and then it turns out in the end that he actually was a talented performer that everybody loved, and once he's released from prison, he actually gets a book deal and is allowed
Yeah.
to continue working on his comedy. So I don't really understand the movie's message as to whether it's providing a critique on that behavior or whether it's glorifying it, saying that by committing the crimes he got what he wanted.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
That's
I
really
don't know.
interesting. That's such an interesting point, mate, completely, because there I think Joker potentially leans towards the more glorification of the crimes and the sympathy you should feel for Arthur, whereas in this film it's more, there is a lot, as you said perfectly, there's a bit of a moral confusion there between, glorification and justification, because
Yeah,
I don't I see I do think Rupert, I actually don't think he's a bad guy. I just think, I think he's probably, well, he's definitely just way too forward and way too keen. He invites himself to Jerry's house uninvited. And there's just so many things in this film that just go under the radar completely about Rupert's character. In the end, in the final monologue, he reveals his parents are both dead, and yet in the film, he thinks that like the audience are to believe that he lives with his mum. I don't know whether he was lying about his parents being dead, or potentially, he was just imagining his mother's voice. Like that, things like that are really interesting, and we see his visions of him and Jerry as colleagues and friends. I, you know, and that's where I think, yeah, Joker took way too much in this film. That this film really set the mark for a mental thriller wherein there is the moral implication of like glorifying crime. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
how did he say in the monologue that his mother had died? Because I think I just missed that.
I'll just get up the final bit, but I don't know, because uh I saw in the comments, a lot of people, because there was like this for, actually, I don't know if I want to promote this, but I can cut this out, can I? Well, because
Yeah,
the film is on YouTube, but in 10 parts, each spanning
right.
11 minutes. So I don't know, but
I mean, you're not doing anything dodgy, YouTube is for anyone's use,
I can't find the exact scene, but um, no, he reveals that I think he reveals that his mother has passed away, or his father has passed away, or both have passed away.
Okay.
And I just thought it was really interesting because he that could be just a lie for the audience, or it could be you know, he has been you know, visioning his mother and living with his mother, and her being in his life. You know, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. I see. I don't always love not knowing what's real and what's not, but I
Mm.
think that this film did that a lot better than Joker did, because I feel like every moment of Joker, I was getting annoyed, and then people would say that, oh, perhaps even the whole film didn't happen, and that just infuriates me, because
Mhm.
I'm like, well, then why did I waste my time watching it?
Yeah, no,
But
completely.
I didn't feel that way about this film, because I think it did it in a much more effective way.
Yeah, completely, mate. Completely. I'm just happy to go by any remarks you had, dude.
Okay. So obviously in the beginning, the film opens with Jerry Langford, is it?
I think so, Jerry Langford. Yeah.
Yeah. So his opening monologue to his audience, and I just felt that he seemed incredibly uncharismatic and unentertaining, uh, but yet seems to be the most famous man in America.
Yeah, there's so many things about Jerry is probably the only character in the film that I can criticize, like that I generally like don't like, because I suppose that is intentional. Like you're not supposed to really like Jerry, but
I
he
don't think
just
that is intentional, Matthew. I think you just like sympathize with kidnappers. I mean,
maybe, but
like
like I don't know.
I strongly believe that Rupert would have killed him, and you're like, nah,
I
not an issue, mate.
well, I think Masha could have killed him for sure.
Yeah, I thought they were saying Marcia, but in like a Bostonian accent, and then when I looked it up, it was Masha.
Yeah,
Uh, a
but no, I do
character that
agree.
I don't really think she belongs in the film, quite honestly.
Really, that's really interesting. Like I can see where you're coming from. I really can, because I actually thought she was a figment of Rupert's imagination as well.
Hmm,
But
interesting.
no, but obviously not. But no, I do think, yeah, as you said, Jerry is quite uncharismatic, and it does confuse me. Like the most famous man in America, he just walks down the streets of New York without security. Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't really think that you know any late night host of the present day would get that much public attention, and they seem a lot more entertaining than
Yeah,
Jerry.
yeah, for sure. Like what would you say? And well, this is a question I kind of wanted to ask you as well. You know, do you think the concept of like late night talk shows in America are like a dying breed? Because I don't know, they seem to be getting a lot more popular these days with their appearance on like platforms like YouTube and stuff. You know, Kimmel and Fallon and James Corden, they're always like top of the trending list. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, there's definitely a couple that I feel need to retire because they've lost whatever spark they had. But I certainly like Conan O'Brien and Jimmy Kimmel. I think you know are really excellent interviewers. But I suppose with the rise of like YouTube stars who interview celebrities anyway, and
Yeah.
that's sort of a that casts an even wider audience, and you don't have to like pay to watch it, and you don't have to like record a TV show. I think TV in general may be on the outs, and it'll
Mhm.
just move to streaming services and YouTube really.
Yeah, completely, mate, completely. Um, but yeah, like, did you have any other points about sort of the opening and about Jerry or anything?
Well, very much to do with the opening.
Okay.
I can really say that opening credits are not something that I miss, because I swear it was like 2 full minutes on a still image of like Masha screaming in the back of a car,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
It
and
was that
that
was
was a bit
strange.
painful.
You know, I think I agree. You know, that might be the only part of the film that I do think is a bit dated, to be honest.
Yeah, uh, and I have to say, I was expecting to go into this film and sort of like cringe at the actions of Rupert, but even from the first interaction with Jerry, I was immediately uncomfortable. Like
Yeah,
especially when he was on like the steps of his apartment building, I was just cringing throughout at every time he sort of like pulled Jerry back to tell him something else.
yeah.
How did you feel?
Yeah, there's definitely moments where you definitely cringe and you feel you want Rupert to stop, because he is definitely way too forward. But I don't know whether this is just me or it is, I don't know, but I do generally sympathize with Rupert. You know, he's not necessarily on the level of like an Arthur Fleck where he's just like completely mistreated by society. But like, you know, even we see by the end of the film, like he definitely is a talented performer and should be given that chance. And I don't know. I like, obviously his actions, like we have to condemn them. You know, the crimes, even though like they were like fake bullets in the gun, you know, even the threat of a gun and you know, kidnapped at gunpoint, that's nothing to joke about really, and they should not be excused. But I do sort of sympathize with him to a certain degree, but likewise, you know, there are things about his character where I do think you are supposed to disagree with him, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, like in the final revelation that he was actually talented. Well, according to the audience, he was talented. I mean, I thought that every joke he told fell flat for me. Uh,
Yeah,
but it may be just that we're the wrong generation.
yeah,
I don't
maybe.
know. But a big regret of mine is that I didn't see this film before seeing Joker,
Hmm.
because even in this review, like we're sort of forced to compare it to Joker rather than Joker to it. You
Hmm.
know, it's kind of sad for me to see such a good film compared to a film that just, you know, stole its glory.
Yeah, no, completely, mate, completely. You know, and I think one thing about the film, there's so many sort of subtle metaphors and remarks it makes, you know, even in the simple fact of the costume design. You know, every scene we see Rupert in, he's in a suit, so you know he wants to portray that he's like a successful member of society when he's anything but that, you know. So I think there's things like that are really interesting, and you know, I don't know, I just think this film really, as you said, you know, it just goes under the radar, and the fact that we're forced to compare it to a film that came out, what, you know, 2 or 3 decades later, it's a disservice to the film because this is just fantastic.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. One big thing that pissed me off throughout the film, and I assume it was supposed to, was the fact that no one could get his name right,
Yeah.
which it was obviously meant to be a running gag, but it just makes me think of society and just think, would that happen? I assume it would, and maybe they were even using sort of a psychological tactic to put him down and tell him that he was never going to be a success.
Yeah, because yeah, well, he gets called Rupert Pumpkin quite a lot, doesn't he? As
Yeah,
well.
someone calls him like Pumpernickel or something, like, you know, that like they just would say anything but his actual name, which I mean I get a fair bit of. I'll not share my full name here, but you know, my names are often reversed.
I actually, yeah, yeah, my handwriting is quite bad. Like, you know, this about me, like my handwriting is
Yeah,
quite bad. So like a lot of people do mistake my surname for something else, or a
which has
different.
led to nicknames of himself.
Yeah, yeah, actually true. So we have both experience. We can empathize with Rupert there, but yeah, like I like listen. I'm a big Rupert Pupkin fan. I know he may be quite funny, but don't label yourself the king of comedy.
Yeah, I suppose just, you know, whenever he dreams of something, he dreams big.
Yeah, I
But
respect that, I suppose.
yeah, it seems like arrogance for someone who, in my opinion, can't tell a joke to save his life. But I suppose he didn't really get a fair shot at it, because we see him giving a monologue, and you know, delivering one-liners in a monologue is different to telling jokes.
Hmm. Yeah, true. That is
So
true. Yeah.
I don't think I can really judge the ability, because it's not like it was a stand-up special.
Yeah, he did good for the monologue, I think. But I guess no, yeah, I do agree. Like some of the jokes probably to a 2020 audience probably don't aren't they see there's a generational thing there, I suppose. You know, as the saying goes, you know, comedy is subjective. So
Sure. I have to say that this film must be like one of the best representations of the downsides of fame.
oh
I
yeah,
don't think I've ever felt that effect throughout a film as strongly as this. Like,
yeah,
would you ever want to be that famous that someone would be so obsessed with you that they would kidnap you?
yeah. No
I would
way,
never
mate.
want
No
to be that
way.
level of fame.
I
I
have
mean,
the exact same point, mate. You know, it does sort of outline like the scary parts of fame completely.
it's the same as with Misery, which we'll go on to talk about. That,
Yeah.
you know, you're so recognizable as a figure that someone actually believes that they have a genuine connection with you, uh,
Hmm.
you know, with no prior interaction. And yeah, it is sort of scary to see, because we know that it's true. You know,
Hmm.
like John Lennon was assassinated by one of his biggest fans. You know, it is sort of a terrifying thing to see.
Completely, dude. Completely.
Even scarier that it happens in real life.
Oh yeah, like that. This sort of thing, you know, does happen in real life, and sometimes
Yeah,
it escalates to more than kidnapping. You know that, and that's the scary thing. You know, we've seen lot of cases there. I can't remember. There was a I can't remember the name of this actress. I don't know. It escapes me, but They're on Case File. I would recommend Case File for any true crime fans out there. You know, there's some stories in there that are eerily similar to this, and it is scary because, as you said, it does happen in real life.
Yeah, I have to admit that Jerry's team, including like Kathy, his personal assistant, are a lot more patient than I would expect. You know,
Absolutely.
I suppose that they're trying to upkeep sort of like a wholesome image, but like I'm surprised he wasn't like kicked out in his ass like the second time he showed up at that office.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because I'm pretty sure
definitely.
he goes there like every day, for a week until they finally actually listen to his tape. And
Yeah.
I really don't think many people would have the patience to contend with that.
Yeah, no, they actually are quite accommodating to Rupert as well. Like they never talk back to him. They're quite respectful, and you know, I think is it Kathy? Yeah, like she listens to the tape and
Yeah,
stuff and gives him a review. So fair
and
play.
I can't believe he even made it into the building. Honestly,
I know.
I would
Yeah.
have thought it would be heavily guarded if it
Oh yeah,
had such
big time.
such famous figures living in it.
Big time.
Uh, and like I just want to talk to you about like sort of the decision of the TV executives because initially they want to just film his performance and not air it because they don't want to give him the sort of global audience or the national audience and the notoriety of having done this.
hmm
And I just wanted to ask you, do you think like the risk was worth the reward of putting him like and putting him on TV and giving him that national audience?
That's a really good question, mate. Because I suppose from the TV executives side, you know, that they don't know if Rupert, you know, they clearly see that Rupert is a bit mentally unstable, so you know they don't want to take the risk of having Jerry Langford be killed, you know. But it is a really difficult one. I think now that you say it, like it probably would be, you know, a safer option to like record it, but then not air it. But then that that brings into the question about like Jerry's safety. So it is interesting because then it sort of does. Well, I'm interested to see what your thoughts actually. Like, what do you think?
Well, I just think that I think in reality they definitely would air it because they could like dine off of that for decades. They could like replay that all the time and go, oh look, here's the guy that kidnapped Jerry.
hmm
And have that news story constantly be brought up. I think it would bring like great attention to like I think Jerry would become infinitely more famous off the back of that,
Yeah.
and then that would bring more money to the TV executives. So
hmm
I think in real life, undoubtedly they would have aired it, but I was surprised to sort of see them have like sort of like a pros and cons approach to this.
Yeah.
I was just surprised to see that, and I don't know whether it was worth the risk of doing it because yeah, it does risk inspiring others, which is what happened in Joker and has happened in other films where you see someone with a message be able to have a global platform, and it happens in real life.
Yeah, and not. I know I keep bringing back Joker, but I saw this comment on. I rewatched Joker after this film, and I saw a comment in one of the final scenes of the film. Spoilers for Joker, by the way. During which he asks Murray to introduce him as Joker, and there was one comment that actually really stuck out to me because someone said, "I reckon Arthur planned on killing himself in TV, but of course then he killed Murray." And that sort of put in my mind, like, do you think, well, I have two questions. One, do you think that is true? And two, do you think in this film Rupert's goal was to just air his monologue, or do you think he had other ulterior motives?
Yeah, I actually, now that you say it, I do think that's true for Joker because I think it was very obvious from the film that he only ever went after those who did him wrong, and he only killed he killed the people on the train because they attacked him, and then he killed people that bullied and belittled him. So there is a possibility that he would have killed Murray Franklin for making fun of him on TV. But I think that if Murray had sort of placated him and appeased him on TV and given him his platform, I do think that Arthur uh, wouldn't have necessarily ended up killing Murray Franklin.
hmm
Uh, and for the King comedy, I don't think he had any ulterior motive. I think that he had his goal and it was realized, and I think he was satisfied with that.
Yeah, I'm completely in the same boat with you, mate. Definitely, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, I was initially disappointed because the whole film obviously spends itself building to the performance at Jerry's show. And for a moment, I thought they weren't going to show it because he sort of starts to speak and they cut away. And then I thought he was just going to go to prison. And I was really concerned that we weren't going to at least see his dream realized. But I think that actually seeing it, I wrote that it's painful to watch, which I think is fair because the jokes for me just didn't land. But you know, the audience was loving it, so I can't criticize.
Did you feel the ending
But
was rushed at all?
I feel like for our time, like for our generation, looking back on it, it is. But I think at the time that's definitely a satisfying conclusion. So I sort of feel that way often with older films, like say Rocky was a film of a similar era. I sort of felt that that ending was rushed, and you know, it's sort of just it ends and either the protagonist or the antagonist wins, and then it's like immediately wrapped up. But I didn't have a problem with that here. You know, I was quite satisfied with the ending.
Yeah, actually, and we'll get into the Misery in a bit, but I think Misery is also strikingly similar to this film, and especially the ending. You know,
Yeah.
and I actually think in both films the ending it's not necessarily rushed, but it does certainly wrap up quickly. And there actually, I suppose, there is somewhat of a time jump. You know, we see we see Rupert and we also see Paul. You know, a few years later after their success, and I just thought that was really interesting. I think this was a clear inspiration for Misery as well, so it is just interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't actually know what year, you know, the novel Misery was written, but I think it was a trend back in that time to quickly adapt Stephen King's novel, so I assume it was quite a quick turnaround. Uh, I don't know why, but I had always just assumed going into this film that the audience would hate his comedy, but I guess that was sort of a subversion of the film that, you know, the whole time Jerry was actually wrong.
Yeah. And that's the thing, mate, because yeah, I suppose that there is maybe a subtle undertones of society looking down on Rupert, not to the extent of Arthur Fleck and Joker, but certainly because you know they keep getting his name wrong, and we actually find out that Rupert is a talented, perhaps even more talented than Jerry. And you know it is debatable at the end of the film whether Rupert is more successful than Jerry. You know, and we see like he's got a best-selling book, I believe, and he's getting a live action picture made based on the book. So I think maybe, as you said perfectly, you know, part of the film is the subversion of Rupert's success, and that perhaps you know he is more successful than Jerry Langford could ever be. So I think that was just brilliant writing on Scorsese's part, or whoever wrote the film.
Yeah, and I assume that because you felt bad for him throughout the film, you were happy with the ending.
I
But for
was.
me, for me, it was sort of infuriating to see, you know, someone profit from crime.
Do you think if the events of the film were to happen in real life, Rupert would become successful after prison release?
I think that he would be incredibly famous, but I don't think the notoriety that he would receive would be positive. I think the vast majority of people would, you know, brand him a criminal, and I definitely think he'd probably. I really see that he would get a best selling novel, but he wouldn't see a penny of profits from it because there are laws against profiting from crime.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, definitely. And there is actually, you know, somewhat striking similarities to Tiger King and what's happened with Joe Exotic there and during his prison because we've seen this really successful Netflix documentary and a potential live action film. I think there is some sort of similarities there, so it is interesting to see how this could play out.
But thankfully, like no one's watching Tiger King and going like, "Oh, what a legend! What a
Yeah,
good
yeah,
guy!"
true.
You
Yeah,
know,
there's a difference there. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
I have to say, I mean, from the few films I've seen from Robert De Niro, this would have to be my favorite performance of his.
Hmm.
I feel in Joker he's a little weak, and then obviously in the other ones, I just don't think he's not a natural born comedian. I have to say. So
Yeah,
I think that this is where he shone most in the
yeah,
films that I've
definitely.
seen.
I think in this film, De Niro, don't get me wrong, he's a fantastic actor, but I think he has benefited from like the tremendous script in this film. You know, there's some great one-liners in there, and yeah, I do agree. Like, this is probably my favorite De Niro performance out of the two I've seen. But it's great. He's great. He's great.
I'm sure you have seen him elsewhere. You just can't place him.
Yeah, it's one of those actors like he's in so many films, isn't he? So
Yeah. So was there anything else you had to say, or do you want to jump into ratings?
I'm happy to jump into ratings, buddy. What would you give it out of 10? I'm really interested for this.
I feel like over this quarantine, I've really had a chance to involve myself in the films I'm watching. So I think I've been very generous with my ratings these days. Uh, but I have to go again and say that this is a 9.5 for me.
Wow, good man. I'm so glad you enjoyed this. Actually, I think I would give it an 8.5. Still a fantastic film, and one of the hidden gems, certainly of Martin Scorsese's filmography, if not films in general.
Yeah, I'm really hoping now that I enjoy Taxi Driver because I often have sort of like a feeling in the pit of my stomach that I'm nervous that I'm gonna hate like a classic,
Hmm.
which happens often with sort of what are considered modern classics. Like, I mean, I don't know why Avengers Endgame is considered a modern classic already, but I sort of seem to accidentally go against the curve, not because I think they're bad films, but just I didn't enjoy them. So
Hmm.
I really hope that, say for Taxi Driver, uh, Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese replicated the success in here.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to review that on the channel someday, and maybe like the Godfather trilogy or films. I don't know if it's a trilogy,
Oh,
but
definitely.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
trilogy.
So I guess is Misery the next one or?
Misery is the next film that we're talking
Awesome,
about
man.
today.
Awesome. And I gotta say, like this was the first film. This is the first one I watched of the three, and I just there was no real reason for that, but I'm so glad I started this one because it's just so good, isn't it?
Oh, it's incredible.
So
I'll be honest, it's so rare that I have nothing bad to say about a film. Uh, Even when I sometimes present you and we have a discussion with about moral quandaries, like with About Time,
mhm.
that doesn't make it not a perfect film in my mind.
Yeah.
I still didn't have criticisms about, say, that film, and I won't have criticisms when we talk about Chef. Don't worry. Uh, but
Oh, I love that.
for a rare few films, I have no criticisms, and this is one of them.
Love it, but love it. I mean, yeah, I'm just happy to go by your notes, mate, and I'll just fill in when I can because there's so much. Oh, there's just so much good stuff about it. Like, there's not so often like you see a film and you think flawless. I think this film is close to being flawless.
Yeah, I have criticisms of the characters, but
Mhm.
not the way that they're written, because that's clearly how they're intended to be portrayed.
Yeah,
So it's not a critique of the film; it's a critique of the characters that are written that way on purpose.
yeah, yeah, completely.
You
So,
know,
yeah, go for it, mate. Go for it.
so I believe the first shot of the film is the page of the final page of Paul Sheldon's new novel,
Yeah.
and I can tell you right now that he is a pretentious writer. And do you want to know why? Because the last sentence of his novel is, "Then what else is there? Dot 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 question mark."
Did you read the final page of the novel?
Well, I mean, it like zooms in heavily, and I just saw a question mark, and I thought, what a wanker. I don't know. I just feel that there's a trend with pretentious novels and asking the audience a rhetorical question at the end.
Tell me this, right? James Caan plays Paul, right?
Yes.
Like, it seems to me like I don't know whether this is a misconception, but he should be on the level of like Marlon Brando and like De Niro. But is he
Oh,
on that level?
it's ridiculous to me. No, I would say the only other, quite embarrassingly, the only other film of his I've seen is Elf.
Oh, is
And
it? Is he Buddy's dad in that film?
he's Buddy's dad in Elf.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I say that's embarrassing, but I don't really blame myself. I think it's that he just hasn't been given the recognition he deserves, so I
He's so
haven't had the
good.
chance to explore his filmography.
He's so good.
I mean, if you want to talk about performances, I had written that, quite often, like when we're talking about performances, I seem to like gravitate towards the more subtle characters. And a lot of people talk about this film and they talk about Annie Wilkes. They say Kathy Bates gave an incredible performance. That's always the first impression when I hear about this film.
Mhm.
But I think that James Caan is the standout performance of this film. I think with like even a much more subtle character and his subtle performance, you feel his fear as much as you feel her anger.
Yeah, mate, you've hit the nail on the head there. And I actually watched a Chris Stuckman review of this straight after the film, and he had mentioned that Kathy Bates got all the awards and all the nominations, and Can just walked away with nothing. And he pointed out on like how how much he respected Can to adopt this role, because he was saying like there was a list of like De Niro, Marlon Brando and stuff, or maybe not Brando, but like really famous actors at the time considered for this role, and like Can took it up, and it is a challenging role because Stuckman was saying, in the wheelchair or a bed for most of the film, that's not an easy demand to make when you're shooting for months, so credit to Can because he is phenomenal in this, really, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, even his dialogue is sort of stripped back. He doesn't have a huge amount of words to work with, so it's all in the performance, and it's one of the most impressive I've ever seen.
Completely, mate. Complete. Like, I get so giddy talking about such a great film like this, and it's so good because like so much great subtlety in it. The red, and one of my first points is like the red title card and on the backdrop of the snow. That's just so visually striking, and the score as well is just phenomenal as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I fully agree with you on the giddiness because it's sort of like, it's a subtle horror film,
Oh
and
yeah,
yeah, I was smiling throughout.
yeah,
I was
yeah,
just
yeah.
I was having a great time, and it
Completely.
really wasn't what I expected.
I'm just happy to go by your points then, mate. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. So obviously Paul experiences a great accident when he slips off the road in his car, and he's saved by Annie Wilkes, who becomes his de facto nurse. Uh, and I'm just really surprised that he's not more immediately terrified whenever she admits to just fully stalking him. He's like, "Oh, what a sweet fan,"
Yeah,
because like because she's stroking his ego. He's just like, "Oh, what a darling."
yeah, that's the thing, mate. And I wanted to ask you this, yeah, and there's many scenes in the film where like Annie has an outburst. I think our first one is when Paul has swearing in the book or something,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
So do
yeah,
you
yeah.
think Paul, and perhaps this is a criticism we can have for the character, do you think he should be suspicious way before this?
Oh, 100%. You know, like she tells him that the only reason that she was able to rescue him was because she was following him. I mean that doesn't instantly arouse his suspicion. That would terrify me.
Oh yeah.
And yet he doesn't even like break a sweat. He like continues smiling and he's like, "Oh well, a girl like you should read my book then." Uh, you know,
Smooth. Yeah.
yeah, like it was as though he was like flirting with her,
Oh
and
well,
I
yeah.
can see why she got the wrong idea. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
because he was sort of uh after hearing that she was following him, he's still cool with that, and then is like really sweet to her. So I can see in her perspective when she already clearly has like mental instability. I can see why she maybe misconstrued that because
Mhm.
she sort of admitted to following him and he was still cool with it.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Like, here's a question I wanted to ask you as well, and in sort of relation to that point. Like, do you think she ever intended to let him go?
I think she intended to let him heal, but expected him to eventually fall in love with her and want to stay.
Mhm.
I obviously one of the most iconic scenes where she uh, breaks his feet so that he can't
Oh,
walk away.
yeah.
I don't think she ever intended to actually commit an act of violence against him. I think she just expected to romance him to the point that they would both realize their love for each other.
Yeah, definitely, man. I actually agree completely. So,
Yeah. And you would think like her dream scenario is coming true. This is like the biggest moment of her life, and he actually wants to be there because she's actually helping him. She's nursing him back to health. So
mhm.
it's not like he's resisting, and he's being very nice to her. Like you would think you would not like peel it back, bring it back a little
Yeah,
bit,
yeah,
and
yeah.
not act as psychotic as you are. You would
Mhm.
think you'd put up a bit of a mask so that he's more likely to stay.
Yeah, definitely, mate, definitely. And actually, I don't know if I've seen this before, but one of and this is maybe jumping a bit. We can track back if we need to, but
Sure.
one of the most like one of the most important scenes of the film is when Paul finds the bobby pin on the floor. I just wanted to ask you, like, do you think uh do you think Annie potentially set that up for him to escape?
See, I'd thought about that. I thought it was maybe an intricate trap, but I feel like in the revelation where she finds the knife and then finds the pin, I feel that there was genuine anger there, and I don't think she had pre-organized that.
Yeah, and did you ever see when you first saw when you were first viewing the film, like, did you think there would be any significance to like the fallen penguin that was placed the wrong way around? Because that always stuck out to me. Like there was like the shot just lasted a bit too long on the penguin. I thought maybe
Yeah.
that's gonna come back later on.
No, I was fully confident. Yeah, I thought that either it was going to be the way he placed it, or that I was hoping that like his wheelchair would go over the tablecloth and just like smash all of them.
Yeah, that would have been brilliant. That would have been great. Because this may be my like naivety or whatever, but part of me did think like he had gotten away with that initial escape, sort of, because the film does leave it for quite a while, doesn't it?
Do you mean when he sort of like starts like crawling to the fridge, or is
Sort of
there
what
an
it
attempt before that?
like what when he initially escapes and like sort of catches the penguin, like when he comes
Yeah,
back
yeah,
into the room, like you know everything's led to be okay in that time until she breaks his ankles with a sledgehammer. So it is really interesting. Like I thought the film left that for quite a good amount of time to sort of place doubt into the audience.
yeah, yeah. I agree with you, and I was sort of happy to see that they subverted our expectations. Like he comes up with such an intricate, well thought out plan, and it's foiled completely by accident.
Yeah,
I really respected that narrative wise.
yeah.
Uh, I don't really know why the sheriff would assume that a kidnapper would take Paul's car with him. You know,
Yeah.
if you're gonna kidnap someone, you don't bring their car with you.
Yeah, the sheriff maybe is a bit past it, wasn't he? He was quite old.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's probably past retirement age. Like the old sheriff is kind of a stereotype of sort of that era of films.
Yeah.
But I think he was pushing it a little bit.
Did you ever? I think his investigation work was good. It was just by accident that Annie had like a outburst in the middle of a public street. But
Yeah.
regardless, do you think the sheriff did any part of you think the sheriff was going to save the day, or did like I when he got his heart blown out through his chest, like, or when he got like shot through the chest by a shotgun, like that was like it was quite funny, but like.
It was hilarious.
But like, did part of you think he will save Paul in that scene, or did you always think Paul would have to be the one to save himself?
Yeah, I do have to fully admit, in that moment, you like a lot of these plots do sort of go the simpler route of, oh, they're foiled by the police. I thought it was going to be more akin to like Silence of the Lambs, where it was left up to the police officers to, or in that case, I think it's the CIA, to sort things out. So
Sure.
yeah, in that moment when he saw Paul, I thought she was maybe going to kick him down the stairs, and that he'd sort of be in the same scenario. But I have to admit, when she like blew out his chest with a shotgun, that was not a moment I was expecting, and it was a moment I enjoyed.
completely, completely. It was just the innocence because he was like Mr. Sheldon, and she's just like, it was brilliant.
I loved Buster so much. He was probably one of my favorite characters of the film, because I
The
don't know, he
sheriff,
sort of
yeah.
had like, yeah, he was just a joyous old man, and I was really sad to see him die.
Yeah, me too. Like my favorite character of the film would probably be Misery the pig. I thought she was an absolute delight.
I did think in the moment that the pig like approached his bed, I was sort of thinking that's a better pet than a dog,
Oh
honestly.
yeah, part of me did think perhaps the pig would be the savior in this, or something accidentally would happen, like where the pig like knocks
sort of
the
like
door down or something.
sort of like the rat in Avengers Endgame, saving the
Exactly,
day.
exactly. Like, but no, I am sort of glad that Paul was the one to see it himself, sort of in the scene, and yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that was the most satisfying conclusion, that he was able to do it himself.
Yeah, definitely, mate, for sure.
I don't really understand how she was arrested for infanticide, like on several counts, and yet she didn't get life. Like she's clearly out in like under 10 years.
Yeah, and she should probably be a well-known individual to the local sheriff department, right?
Yeah, I mean, like on the helicopter ride over her house, he says that's the Wilkes farm, so it's not like she's using an alias. Like
Yeah.
he fully knows someone called Annie Wilkes lives there, and he did not connect the dots. I mean, I assume that she just wasn't arrested like in that state. Like I assume she was released from prison and then left the state that she was arrested in.
Mhm.
But I mean, you would think if you're running from the law and like planning to commit more crimes, that you're going to use an alias.
Yeah. So did it turn out that she was like basically a serial killer in the hospital then as a nurse, didn't it?
yeah, it seems that she killed her husband and then killed her competition in college for like valedictorian, and then she killed anyone else that got in her way. I don't really see how babies in a
Yeah,
hospital are getting in her way, but yeah, she clearly killed, in the dozens.
yeah, definitely. And yeah, it is a mystery how she didn't get life for that, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I suppose we often see sort of the the legal system
Yeah,
letting criminals go without sufficient prison time.
yeah, true, mate,
But I
true.
have to say, aside from Buster getting his chest blown out, the best moment of the film was just Paul flipping her off from the window.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a moment that stood out to you. When did you watch this film? Was it a few days ago?
It was a couple days ago. Yesterday, actually, yesterday.
Do
And
you remember the moment I'm talking about though?
is it the bit where like she's like, "Hey," and she goes, and he goes like that?
Yeah, like she waves enthusiastically, says like "Hey, pumpkin," and then it's just him silently flipping her off. I just
My
loved
favorite
it.
part of the film was when like he's he's making her eat like the burnt book. He's like, "Eat it, bitch, eat it." I thought that
Yes,
was
I
great.
love that so much.
One question I wanted to ask you, mate, just before this was like when do you think Paul starts to get a little bit suspicious of Annie in the film?
I feel like after her first outburst over the death of, actually, I think, yeah, when she realizes that Misery dies, I don't think that he was scared for his life until that point.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Definitely, I agree.
Oh, yeah, good, good.
Good.
Sorry, I don't really know what you cut out of this podcast. I'm interested to hear. Like,
I well, go ahead, mate.
no, I'd just like to hear like what kind of things do you cut out of the podcast?
Bits where like well, obviously the start bit, and then sometimes if I excuse myself, go to the bathroom or something, or if there's like a pause. But yeah, like, do you think I sort of wanted to say like this film? It is more of an Annie film than a Paul film. You know, there's a great character study there of her character and how she's like mentally unstable, and I just think Kathy Bates is she can just switch from like cute and endearing to like you know clearly mentally unstable and pure anger. Like I think that was just brilliant in her performance.
Yeah, fully agree. And as you said, it is more of her film. We see her backstory fleshed out a lot more.
Yeah.
And I really liked sort of the use of the scrapbook instead of exposition or flashbacks, because I feel like she could have easily told him everything while he was sat in bed. But I think sort of letting it play out visually for the audience was much more pleasing.
Definitely, mate. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
Uh, Yes, as I said, like I did expect Buster to just be pushed down the stairs, and the gunshot was totally unexpected. And I really liked how many times this film subverted my expectations,
Oh
because
yeah.
it was constant. I couldn't really predict what was going to happen next. One really weird detail I picked up on was the fact that the N on his typewriter doesn't work.
Do you think there was a secret message in that or not?
No, it was literally just every N wasn't there, and I thought maybe it would show the he lost the knife, but then he had like broken off the N on the typewriter, and he
Oh,
was
that would
going
have
to
been
stab her with that.
yeah.
Uh,
I think that
which
would have
I
been
think
that would have been good. That would have been good.
I thought that was a more logical weapon to use.
Yeah.
I think she kind of like put a weapon in the palm of his hands, and was surprised that he sort of didn't use the typewriter earlier.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, that was just sort of a weird detail I picked up on.
Do you think
Uh,
sorry mate, go ahead.
oh no, I have nothing
I
else.
was gonna say like when the sheriff visits the house, do you think she was gonna drug his hot chocolate?
Yeah, I definitely think it was poisoned or drugged. But I have to say, he did an absolutely shithouse job of checking that place.
There's the two
You know,
bits where he just walks into your room and goes like, "Nothing to see here," and just walks
yeah,
through.
I mean, let alone like fair enough. She put Paul like behind a secret door, but he didn't even check every room. Like he checked half the house and was like, "This woman's clean,
Yeah,
gotta
it's old
go."
age,
And
mate. It's
like,
old age.
and then when he hears a noise, he assumes it's her and doesn't think, "Oh yeah, maybe it's like the actual prisoner that I was here to check up on." I thought it was just kind of like a piss poor investigation job, to be honest.
Absolutely, yeah. No backup officers or anything.
No, like so obviously in the final 10 minutes or so of the film, we see the final confrontation. And just once again, I don't know what's wrong with me, but the violence in this film I
It's
just
so
find
funny.
hilarious.
It's so
Like
good.
the tussle was just so hilarious. Like when he like smashes her head with the typewriter, and then she hits her head and she's still not dead. Like
Yeah,
it felt like a classic horror film where the
it did.
slasher is impervious to all damage. And I obviously it felt satisfying to see Paul get himself out of that scenario and use his resourcefulness. He
Mhm.
was building up his strength by sort of like bench pressing the typewriter,
Yeah, yeah.
and then he uses that strength to finally kill her. How did you feel about that
I thought that was really
interaction?
smart. Yeah, like the only thing about the confrontation was like, like it is quite. He is lucky that she would like bend down to like stop the books from burning to like hit her over the head with a typewriter. But
Also, like there's one point where he like flat palms her in the forehead, and there's like a huge like kathunk sound effect, and I'm like, how hard did he hit her?
but I'm just curious as to why Paul wouldn't try to like poison the wine again, because were those drugs like would they sedate people? I assume they were like to tranquilize them.
Yeah, there's never actually any real development on that. She says that they're just pain medication, and so there's no evidence explicit in the film to say otherwise. But yeah, I just always thought that she was poisoning him and she was causing the pain in his legs.
Yeah.
But there's nothing actually explicit to say that. But we found out that he was there for over 4 weeks. So yeah, I don't really see why he can just save up another supply.
Mm-hmm. Do you think potentially because when he tries to poison her wine, I think that's after his first escape attempt. So do you think do you think she knew that he would try to poison the wine so that she accidentally spilled it?
No, because I feel like in every other confrontation they have, she's very overt about what she knows about him. She reveals that like she's seen like his bobby pin and she's seen the knife. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like if she knew about his plot, she would have said to him.
Yeah. I mean, see when she like gets the sledgehammer and like breaks his feet, that was so
That was
uncomfortable.
gnarly.
Oh man, that
Oh,
was
just like
rough.
the snap of the bones. Like
Oh, and you
I
can
assume
actually see it.
it must be a practical effect, but like that was insane.
Oh,
I
it's
love
so
that
good.
so much.
I didn't know that was a really iconic scene. Apparently.
Yeah, there's a lot of homages to it, sort of in television and other movies. But I didn't expect it to like take place in the daytime. I thought that the moment where she like appears above his bed, I thought that was going to be the moment that happened. But it made more narrative sense to happen when it did.
It did completely, yeah, for sure. Have you got any other points, dude?
No, nothing more from me. Do you have anything
I just
else to
wanted,
comment on?
just a few more. I just wanted to ask you, what would you do in Paul's situation? Like, would you do anything differently to Paul, or do you think he? Because I think he should be praised for like his use of like his resourcefulness.
Yeah, no, I really don't think I'm resourceful enough or capable enough of doing most of what he did. I feel like I would have just laid back and appeased her as much as I could have.
Me
You
too.
know, until the end where she says, "Okay, when you finish the book, like I'm going to kill you and then myself." Up until that point, I would have said, "Well, just finish the book. That'll make her happy." If I had the talent to write the way that she wants him to write, I would have just made the book for her. And I feel like throughout the film, if he had just appeased her, she wouldn't have even got the violent urges to, break his ankles or to, decide to kill him in the end. So yeah, I probably would have just agreed to her demands.
Yeah.
How would you have played
No,
it?
completely the same. I don't think I would have the resourcefulness nor the courage to try and do anything. But another thing, like, is there any part of you that feels a bit bad for Annie, or not really?
Oh, I mean, she's a child murderer.
Yeah.
I feel like if
But
we
before
didn't,
that reveal, maybe.
yeah, I feel like before that reveal, I was like, well, this is clearly just a sad, mentally unstable person who clearly doesn't have anyone else in her life. But I feel like that reveal that she's done things like this before completely
Yeah.
recontextualizes that, and
Completely. Yeah.
kind of makes me despise her.
Yeah. Definitely, mate. Completely. Like, part of me does want to know what happened immediately after, like, he killed her in self-defense. Like, I think because the film just does jump like 18 months later or something. So I think it would have been interesting to see like the immediate aftermath and stuff because
Because
I
I
don't
mean, he's
know.
not like dancing his way out of that house. Like I have no idea how he got out of there.
I mean, actually, now that you mention that, one of the more horrifying scenes in the film is when like he is, because James Caan gives such a physical performance. When he goes to the door and finds it's unlocked, like that is horrible because you realize like he's trapped there.
Yeah,
But
it is just a thoroughly terrifying film,
yes, so
even
good.
in its subtlety. I mean, there's no blood and gore and guts,
Mhm.
but just the like sense of confinement and claustrophobia is really
Completely,
intense.
definitely, bud, definitely. So, did you want to move on to ratings then?
Oh yeah.
No worries. What would you give it then? I'm really intrigued.
Well, in essence, I really think this is pretty much a perfect film. That there's not one thing that I could fault the movie for. I just loved it on every level, performances, writing, and the visuals. So I have to give it a 10 out of 10.
Awesome, man. So would I. It's so good. Probably the best Stephen King adaptation I've seen. It does sort of put into perspective. Obviously it has a much different plot as well, but no, this film is just so good, man. It's so good.
Yeah, and there's many others that we have to talk about
Oh yeah,
that
definitely,
I hope we can soon.
definitely, bro, definitely. So, did you want to mention, or do you want to go on to our third and final film today?
Yeah, sure.
Let's do it.
So our final film for today is American Beauty from 1999, a Sam Mendes film, which I had never actually seen any of these three films, and this was sort of the one that I'd heard the most about and had the most hype behind it because I know quite a few people who really love it.
Yeah, this film is like it's it's just a masterpiece. Like this is one of my favorites of all time, honestly.
I loved it so much. Are you going to say that was this the one that you would have said shaped your movie going experience?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those films where I'll always remember my first viewing of it because it's just like you said about Misery. It's just so subtle, but also like it's just I don't know. It's just so incredible. Like I can't wait to talk about this.
Cool. So uh, I was sort of surprised to see the DreamWorks logo at the beginning of this because I
I
was
thought
like,
I
I
put on the wrong movie.
yeah, because I mean, I just always have a mental association with them working on kids' films and not films about pedophiles. But
Yeah.
I suppose that that's the DreamWorks animation department, and that's that's where they're based mostly these days. Are you okay there, Matthew?
Yeah, it's just the way you worded that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was it was quite it was jarring to see a DreamWorks logo as well. And actually, this film was I think there are certain scenes in this film that are parody in another DreamWorks property, Madagascar. If you've seen it,
I think yeah, I have seen it, but I'll be honest, I don't really get the correlation.
there I think that the score is when like the what's the lion called in that
Marty?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, no, sorry, it's Alex.
Alex
Alex is
and
the
like he's
lion, and
just
Marty's the zebra.
yeah, and Alex is just like lying in like a pile of steaks doing like angel wings or something.
Oh, so you sort of think that's a parallel to the rose petals?
Yeah, and I think the score is exactly the same as well. That's quite dark if that is the same as well.
I mean, I sort of made a comment on the score in that it's very bizarre for this kind of film. Like, I would have put this score over like an upbeat documentary. Like it's sort of like uh, yeah, it's just sort of
Dude,
quite upbeat, and it really doesn't match the tone of the film, which I thought was really interesting
I
because
thought
it's
that yeah,
it's
completely,
it's
mate.
it's really jarring, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, because I guess one of the main points of the film is like how for lack of a better term, how like scary this typical suburban American life can be, and how out of the ordinary some people are. There's so many complex characters in here. Like every character has got an evil in their lives that they're dealing with, and I think that's so amazing. Lester is dealing with issue of obsession, which is the title of the podcast. That's sort of why we guess we're talking about this film, but also
Yeah.
his wife, is it Carolyn?
Yep.
Yeah, she's dealing with an marital she's an affair, and
Yeah. Her
Jane
obsession for success.
her obsession for success. Jane is dealing with her obsession over a low self esteem and her obsession with not feeling as good as other people, especially oh what's the
Angela.
Angela's, yes, especially like not being as good as Angela. And even Angela's dealing with the fact that she you know makes herself like she creates this bravado that she's this really super popular girl who's had so many experiences in life, when it turns out she's anything but that, really. It's just such a complex film. I just love every character in this.
Yeah, I have to say that it is probably some of the most extensive character development that I've ever seen. In the first scene that we sort of see Carolyn on her own, where she's doing her real estate business, I really thought like that this was going to be like the biggest downside to the film, and I was thinking you could easily cut this, but then just as you said, the evil in each individual life was so intriguing in a way
Completely.
I didn't expect.
Completely, mate. Like, there are so many characters you can sort of feel sorry for. Like, I think you can sympathize with Carolyn. Her marriage isn't where she wants it to be, but then I don't know. Like, I don't know.
It's
Part of me
difficult
does
to
feel.
talk about this film
What is
in
it?
many ways. It's difficult to talk about this film in many ways
It
because
is.
you
It is.
know we have to obviously say that you know Lester's uh, obsession over this underage girl is obviously something that should be condemned.
Mm-hmm. Oh, completely. And given the whole controversy surrounding Kevin Spacey, it is hard to talk about this film, like you said, and also the film does deal with a lot of complex issues which are hard to talk about. But part of me at the beginning of the film, I do sort of feel bad for Lester. Like, he does sort of feel like he's in a midlife crisis and stuff. And like, I just wanted to ask you, like, why do you think people have a midlife crisis? Because there are so many different reasons, aren't there?
Well, yeah, I suppose that just when you're young, your life has infinite possibilities. Who you choose to date, and then who you choose to marry, and how you choose to live your life, and then you realize in that moment that this is the life you're stuck with, and some people aren't happy about that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I would say like that seems to be the biggest factor.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, mate. And Lester is such a complex character in that you know he is dealing with like an evil in his life that is this obsession over Angela. And we'll get on. I am interested to hear your thoughts on his character development and what happens at the end of the film with him. But
Yeah.
like, I'm just happy, as I say, happy to go by your notes, mate. Because yeah, it's happy.
Well, so I would say the moment where this movie really kicks into gear is the cheerleading scene,
Hmm.
where Lester and Carolyn have decided to go see their daughter dance. And before we go into the significance of that scene, I have to say that that dance is some of the dullest choreography I've ever seen.
Nothing special about it, is there?
I mean, it was also just plain bad. I mean, they were sort of just like walking in reverse and then like flapping their arms about. I was like, I mean, like if this is what cheerleading is, sign me up. They were sort of like doing like top hat tricks.
Yeah.
I wasn't impressed, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But that scene's obviously incredibly significant to the narrative of the film,
Hmm.
and I think that the visual direction is incredible in its representation of Angela becoming Lester's sole obsession, especially sort of like the spotlight on her, sort of showing like his blinders going up and like forever only focusing on her, and then the disappearance of all the spectators around him, and it's just him and her in that moment. There's nothing else important.
Yeah, completely. And I don't know whether it was just me who got this, but it sort of feels like his obsession is really like integral to his like character at the start of the film. But I sort of felt like halfway through the film it does wane a bit, and he's not as obsessed with her until she reappears in his life again. I don't know if you got that as well.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. It sort of shifts from his attraction to her to more the reasons that he doesn't like his current life, and then back to her near the end. So yeah, there is sort of a fair chunk of the film where Angela doesn't even appear, and his sort of fascinations stop once he tries to get his life back on the track that he wants it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I fully agree with you.
Like, I can edit this back.
I was like, this is a moment that gets cut out. Uh, uh, it's just sort of we've been talking more casually this episode, so like some of my notes like aren't in order anymore.
No worries.
But there's one moment where Lester realizes he needs to buff up, because if he has any hopes of uh, gaining a mutual attraction from Angela, he has to start getting jacked. And there's one moment where he's exercising while smoking weed, and Bob Dylan's "All Along the Watchtower" is playing,
Oh, I
and
know
I
you love
think
that song.
it's one of my absolute favorite songs, and Bob Dylan is my favorite solo artist. So that was that was a really great moment, and an excellent soundtrack choice. But I also think it's the perfect song to encapsulate what's going on in his life, because there's a clear message in that song that he wants to like break away from his life. You know, the most famous line from it would be like, you know,
You
that there
like
must be
muscles.
some way. There no, there must be some way out of here, and that's exactly what Lester's thinking at that moment. That there must be a way to escape his life as it is right now.
Mate, yeah, definitely, mate, completely. And yeah, as you said, like there is so much subtlety in this film, with the soundtrack of Bob Dylan as well, and with the recurring motif of the red roses, the lust there, and obviously foreshadows his death at the end. So, I
Yeah,
just think this film is just the perfect mix of subtlety and complexity, and
yeah,
like, and every character has a flaw in this. Like, it's not just Lester, and I think the film does stress that like the main arc of the film is how Lester like deals with the obsession and conquers it. Even and I have these points. Like there are points where Angela is like just well, maybe not just as creepy about Lester, but there's certain boundaries that she crosses with Jane, where she asks her some like really inappropriate questions about him.
yeah. I think it's obvious that there is a mutual attraction. It's just that his attraction is as the condemnable one,
Mhm.
because his
Yeah,
is the one that goes against the law.
yeah, no, for sure, mate, definitely. And
But
no, go ahead, mate.
oh, you go ahead.
No, no, my point was just about Ricky
We will
like
have a fight one of these days about who goes next. Yes. What about Ricky?
he likes Pink Floyd, which I thought you would like.
Yes, I did, like, because it instantly jumped from them talking about Pink Floyd to the Bob Dylan song playing, and I was just like, this film gets me on a level.
Love
Uh, and I really feel like obviously this film is very complex in its themes, and I've done I did a bit of research into sort of like the interpretations of themes,
sure.
but this feels like a lot of films put into one, and this is the first time I've said that where I don't mean it negatively. And if I
Yeah.
had to sort of narratively compare it to other projects, I would say it's sort of like a mix between Lolita and A Streetcar Named Desire.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen Lolita, but Streetcar Named Desire I can definitely see. Yeah.
Because sort of in the Lolita angle, it's, sort of an older man becoming obsessed with an underage girl, and then with the Streetcar Named Desire, it's sort of a relative bringing someone into the family that the main character becomes attracted to, and they sort of go through like a spiral of violence, which ultimately leads to the destruction of certain characters. So
That's so great. Yeah, I should point that out. Actually, mate, yeah, that's great.
yeah, I mean that was just how I saw it, and I think those are two incredible influences to draw on. I don't know whether intentional. I assume that the Lolita comparison was intended, because it does sort of loosely follow that, where the person is aware of their soon to be demise
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
as
think that's
well.
so insightful of you because like you're so right completely, and there is sort of like the film sort of I guess the film does sort of go out of its way to sort of illustrate, Lester and Carolyn. They want to present their life in sort of in a similar fashion to King of Comedy. Like they want to be seen as like successful members of society. Carolyn even instructs him to ask them to behave when they're out on like a formal ball, and I just think it's really interesting because behind the doors of their house and in the comfort of their own home, they're anything but normal. You know, Lester is like working out naked, which is if people do that, fair enough. But like by a brightly lit room where people could visibly see him, we see that wall starting to fade, and he's starting to become his true self. And even and there are some even more graphic scenes, and we can see that that Lester and Carolyn, their marriage is being tested and it is failing. And there are scenes in the film that potentially hint at domestic abuse. We never directly see it, but when he smashes a plate against the wall, we see his real aggression come out. And I don't think he did domestically abuse them in the film. It's not directly seen, I don't think, but Yeah, I just think it's really interesting, like the complexity of Lester in particular, like how emotionally complex he is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've never, you know, we often talk about and like ask each other questions about the plot, but we don't often dig this deep into the characters
Yeah, yeah.
because I don't think I've seen a film, you know, this well executed character wise in, you know, development and depth. Because Carolyn, near the end of the film, hears on the radio sort of a mantra that she starts repeating, that I will not be a victim anymore. And you know, obviously, as the viewers of the film, we see Lester's psyche. We see that he's become attracted to an underage girl, but in that moment, she doesn't know that. So she's sort of saying that she won't be a victim anymore. But I feel like, you know, in her mind, all that she knows is that she cheated on Lester and she slapped her daughter. So
Mhm.
I feel like if anyone, you know, to her knowledge in that moment, she's really the one that's betrayed their family, not Lester.
Yeah, completely, mate, completely. And that's like the complexity of her character. You know, she wants to be seen as the victim. She wants to put up that facade of society that society expects her to be, but she can't. And the fact that I guess there is sort of an ambiguity as to who kills Lester. You know, I personally believe it's the Colonel, the neighbor, but it's
Yeah,
hard to judge. Um, but like another
yeah,
thing I guess I wanted to ask you was like the film's script is probably the thing I can praise it the most for. There's some fantastic one-liners in there. You know, and for all the controversy that does surround Kevin Spacey, and you know, he's not a great dude, he's not a great man, but you know, in this film, I think his performance is good, and I think he does have some good line delivery, but maybe that is down to the success of the script. You know, it's so well written, mate, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, speaking of sort of line delivery and tone of voice and stuff like that, as I said, you know, I'd done some research and there was extensive uh, description of sort of different interpretations of the film.
Go for it, mate.
And the one that connected with me most was the interpretation that the film is about like the hollow existence of the American suburbs, which I think would explain like the flatness of some of the performances. Because
Okay.
I feel like especially Wes Bentley and Kevin Spacey, I would say they're the most they're the two that you would put in the obsessive category. You know, I mean, you know, as in like infatuation with people rather
Mhm.
than like a goal.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, I feel like if it is about the emptiness of existence, I feel like their performances are incredible
Oh
if
yeah.
that's what they're trying to deliver.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Was Wes Bentley also the villain in Ghost Rider? Is he Ricky?
Yeah, yeah, he
That
was.
is because like he's actually really talented, like amazingly so. And like Ricky's a character we barely even mentioned, and you know the whole. I mean, Riverdale season 4 probably stole the plot line of the videotapes, but no, he's such a that's a character we haven't even mentioned, and he's just so integral to the actual plot of the film. Like I don't know, like do we think he's well? Obviously, there's certain creepy aspects about him, but like, do you think he's a bad dude? Because I love the relationship him and Lester develop.
Well, I think that, you know, obviously you can condemn some decisions that he makes, but I do think that in this scenario, it's like a nurture over a nature situation. You know, I think
Mhm.
that it's because of the sort of the hatefulness of his father and the domestic abuse that he's suffered, you
Mhm.
know, that caused him to have a mental breakdown and then has led to scenarios like this. So I think that the root of, you know, the blame for his actions goes to his dad.
Yeah, man, completely. And I get that's another character who we haven't really mentioned. Is it Frank is his name or
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, like he's
Frank,
such a
played by Chris Cooper.
like he is it's another character I haven't mentioned, and he's so integral to the plot as well because you know and that's the thing. The American suburbs, he's putting up that facade of I'm a colonel, you know, I'm the embodiment of toxic masculinity. I'm homophobic, you know, and it turns out he is
He
bisexual
himself
or
is
gay.
yeah, my interpretation was that he was homosexual and then was just uh, sort of yeah putting up the facade of a perfect life.
Hmm.
Which I have to be honest, I thought in that moment he was there to kill
Me
uh,
too.
Lester,
Yeah.
so that did completely subvert my expectations. and it must have been Chris Cooper's performance, but I felt the hatefulness and the spitefulness uh, that he had towards homosexuals. So I did not consider for one second that he himself was homosexual.
Not at all. And the fact that, one of my favorite scenes in the film, and the fact that the film has so much subtle humor in there. When he thinks Lester and Ricky are engaging in sexual activity together, like that was quite humorous, because you can sense his rage and vexation, but it's anything but that. He himself is he kisses Lester, so it's just the subversion of that was, as you said, was so eloquently done.
Yeah, and I do have to say, it was my expectation that that Frank was the one uh to kill Lester, but
Mhm.
I do think that he is the one that killed Lester. There is some uh ambiguity in that, like Carolyn hides her gun and she seems sort of agitated, but Frank comes home covered in blood. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm leaning towards him, but it was by no means the motive I expected. I thought it was going to be uh, hatefulness towards the gay community, in that he, you know, mistakenly thought that Ricky and Lester had been having sex.
Why do
So
you think he does
the
kill him?
I think he uh, I think he kills him because this character is ashamed of being homosexual. Because I don't think that he's just being homophobic. Uh, I don't think he's just doing that to put up a facade. I think he believes it and is ashamed of himself.
Okay, that's really
So
interesting.
I think that he kills Lester so that no one knows.
Man, that is actually so insightful as well. I never actually considered that. And like one thing I think this is probably the most integral element of the film. It's Lester's decision to be happy with his life, because he lived the last few weeks of his life the way he would normally. He works out at the gym, he smokes weed, and he doesn't follow and I think it's really interesting that he doesn't follow through with assuming a relationship of some kind with Angela. He stops himself there and thinks, I don't want this. I'm just curious as to think as to your assumption, like as to why he does that. Do you think he does that as because he knows it's wrong? Do you think he does it because he's happy with his life now, or what are your thoughts on that? Because it's so integral.
Yeah, no, I don't think that he like suddenly grows a conscience and thinks this is wrong, because he sort of I think he recognizes her innocence once she reveals that she actually hasn't lost her virginity.
Mhm.
I think he starts to think of her as a child again, and that's why he sort of like intimately wraps her in a blanket, and sort of thinks of her as his daughter's friend again, rather than having a sexual desire. But I don't necessarily think that he recognizes it's wrong. I think that he is just content in his life, as you said.
Yeah. And do you think when he dies, like, do you think he is content with his life at that point? We see him looking at a photograph of his family. Like, do you think in that point, he's tranquil, he's happy with it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously in the final monologue of the film, he talks about what he saw in the flashes right before his death, and they're all positive memories. Even of his wife, who he grew to dislike, he only has positive thoughts in his moment of death. So
Hmm.
I think that was sort of uh, a moment where he realized that he was happy with how he lived his life.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I guess, like, do you think Lester is the antagonist of the film? And because I don't know if he is. It's hard to say, because his actions are definitely immoral, and there's no excusing that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a question that could be answered, just because of the complexity of each individual character.
Hmm.
Every single person has their flaw. He's certainly the main character, but I don't know if he's the antagonist. Uh, because yeah, again, there's a lot of problematic things in the film to discuss. There's themes of uh, homophobia and pedophilia, and it's a very difficult film to discuss. I think without like I'm really trying not to come off as
No, I
insensitive,
know. Yeah,
or
yeah, no, I understand.
so
I understand.
it's difficult topics to talk around and to talk about. So yes, obviously his actions are immoral.
Yeah.
Uh,
It is a hard one, mate, and like I don't hold it against you at all, because it is as you said perfectly. It is a hard topic to talk about and analyze critically. But that's just there are some just it's so the film's ending is just so suspenseful, and I think like the pace just slows right down towards the end, and like the murder comes out of nowhere really, and it's just it's just so good. I just love it so much, man.
I really loved it as well. I don't think I've ever had like as good a movie watching experience as I did today, because I watched all three of the films that we discussed today,
Mhm.
uh, this morning, kind of regretfully because I didn't get the chance to sort of enjoy each one as an individual viewing experience. But yeah, I had such a great day today watching all these films
Me
and
too, bro.
discussing them with you.
Likewise,
Uh,
bro. Likewise, man. See the reveal where where Lester finds out Carolyn and the dude are having an affair at the drive-through. I was like, that is the best. That is just golden. That is just so
I
good.
love that he just didn't care
Yeah. Why do you think he
because
doesn't care? Why do you think he doesn't?
I think because he's ceased to care about his wife, so he ceased to care about the relationship. So you know, I guess he was just happy for her that they don't have to suffer together as a couple anymore.
Yeah, like it's just so well written and stuff, and I don't know if most of the humor is intentional or unintentional. There's just so many great lines in there. My favorite line is when Angela's like, have you been working out? And he's like, you like muscles?
Muscles,
I love that.
I love that. Yeah,
And then Ricky's like, yeah, that's right, Dad. I suck dick. I'm the best piece of ass in 3 states. Like,
yeah.
brilliant writing, brilliant writing.
Yeah, I have to commend like it is one of the best screenplays. But apparently, the original script was a lot more cynical, and I assume they filmed it as is, and then sort of Sam Mendes sort of edited the film to have a bit more of a humorous take. Like I assume sort of the hollowness of existence was more evident in the original script, and
Mm.
then sort of that editing process sort of left it open to interpretation a little more, which
Yeah,
I think's more interesting because that creates a more interesting discussion.
yeah. Like in relation to what you said, what do you think the main theme of the film is in Sam Mendes' envision of it? Like, do you think it is the sort of the subtlety of the American suburban life and the this what was the way you put it there? Sorry,
Sort of like the
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 hollowness.
hollowness of
The
existence.
hollowness of existence, or do you think it is obsession, or do you think it is moving on and being happy with your life? What do you think the main theme is? I'm really interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's maybe just the fact that nothing is ever perfect. There's always another in your mind better option. The grass is always greener on the other side because Lester on paper lives the perfect life. He lives in the suburbs and he has a well-paying job and he has a daughter and a wife. But in reality, he's unhappy in that marriage. He doesn't have a good relationship with his daughter. He hates his job and he's in love with an underage girl. So I think the point is that there's always something past like your checklist of life that you see that you want beyond that.
Yeah, man, definitely. It's just so complex and so subtle in its themes. So I just can't praise it enough. That's so good. Like, have you got any other concluding points for me, or did you want to head into the ratings?
That's all from me. So I'm good to go on ratings. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Um, I would say definitely a 10. I'm just trying to think of where it would rank in the top five, because it definitely gets in there. It's just
Your top five movies that shaped you. Your top five movies of all time.
well, 500 Days of Summer is number one in both, but I think this film has to go second because
Wow.
I just it's the first film I've ever saw and thought about it and thought about it, other than like 500 Days of Summer. But I don't know. It's just something about this film. It's just so complex. And I don't know if it is really well critically acclaimed. It seems like it's reasonably went under the radar, but maybe
Oh, it absolutely swept the Oscars.
did it.
They got like every award. They got Best Picture. They got Best Actor
Oh,
from Kevin Spacey. They won like 6 or 7 awards. I read them earlier.
well, mate. Honestly, like you made some awesome points there. I'm really gonna think about after this. Like, what would you rate it actually? Because I'm so excited.
Well, I was initially going to go with a very solid 9.5. But speaking to you, I'm really convinced that I had absolutely no issues with this film. It was perfect on every level. It was just as good as Misery. but I feel like it had even more of a complex narrative and, incredibly impressive character development. So I'm gonna have to go there with you and give it a 10 out of 10.
Oh man, I'm so glad because I don't think this is probably the first podcast we've done where we love all three films like to this
Yeah,
degree, which is great.
yeah, that's never happened. I mean, I expected that to happen with sort of Pixar, and I think it's going to happen maybe in a few weeks when we get to talk about like a very solid string of
Oh yeah.
Pixar films. But yeah, I don't think we've ever had such a clean sweep of films.
Yeah, man. And this review, it has been sort of different in our review. Like, I think we've been a lot more critical, not necessarily like critical negative, but like we've probably went more in depth than we usually would. So I've honestly had an absolute blast recording this with you. It's been one of my favorites.
I had a great time. Like I like it when we sort of move away from plot and we talk about themes and character and performances and stuff like that. It's a really interesting discussion.
It really is, man. So, do you want me to wrap up the episode then, dude? Yeah.
Yeah, sure, go
No
right ahead.
worries. So thank you for everyone who's watched this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you haven't, well, I assume you've watched the films, but if you haven't, check them out. Honestly, so good. Thank you for everyone who's liked, subscribed, comment, shared. Leave your thoughts down below. Email us at moviematespodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, take care, guys. Hope your families are all safe and well. Hope you're all safe and well. And we'll be back soon with Pixar Part 2.
Yeah.
Awesome. So see you then, guys. Take care and bye bye.
Bye bye.